Pro Group Management, workers' comp that works for you.
Welcome to Nevada Newsmakers. On the broadcast today, we're talking boards and commissions reform with Dr. Kristopher Sanchez, Director of the Nevada Department of Business and Industry, is here for the whole show on the all-new Nevada Newsmakers.
When in Carson City, Nevada Newsmakers records in the conference room of the Nevada Builders Alliance. Coverage of the 2025 legislative session is brought to you by Pro Group Management, workers' comp that works for you. NV Energy, proudly serving Nevada, providing electricity to 2.4 million electric customers. The Retail Association of Nevada, looking out for business. And by Story County, helping build Nevada's future.
As you know, Reno is booming. Toll's development company is helping it grow with insightful design and development, building community with every project, adding beauty, adding excitement, emphasizing our shared humanity. Reno is becoming bigger. Toll's development is helping it become better, more livable, more enjoyable. To learn more, go to tollsdevelopment.com. tollsdevelopment.com.
Like a traditional handmade basket, retail is woven into the fabric of life in Nevada. From big box to mom and pop, retail supports our communities in countless ways. Jobs for the disabled, team uniforms for kids, help for the elderly, and so much more. Retail employs over 1 in 10 workers. Retail supports Nevada, and we support retail.
RANNV.org.
This is Nevada Newsmakers with host Sam Shad, a no-holds-barred political forum. Now, from the Nevada Newsmakers broadcast headquarters, here is Sam Shad.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, coming to you from Carson City. We're at the home of the Nevada Builders Alliance, and we are delighted to welcome back to the program Dr. Kristopher Sanchez. He's the Director of the Nevada Department of Business and Industry. Welcome, sir.
Hey, how are you, Sam? Good to see you.
I'm doing well. So you picked up a really small thing to carry for the governor in this session, and that is reforming boards and commissions. Let's start out with the history of this. How far do boards and commissions in Nevada go back?
You know, it's a storied history, and it's not just in Nevada, it's nationally and in fact globally. They go back to, you know, the Middle Ages and the guilds that existed if you really trace the history. But from our purposes in Nevada, we went back to about 1875, and that was the first instance where an occupational licensing requirement was placed on an occupation, and that was the medical industry.
Wasn't Bill Raggio in power then?
And yeah, right.
No, just kidding.
And you know, there's a series of things that have happened over the last, let's say, 100 years. So 1924, there was the New York Bureau of Municipal Research. Pardon me. They did a study on Nevada at the time and the government and how it functions. And in that study, they recommended that boards and commissions be able to communicate more closely with the departments that existed at the time. 1937, FDR does a study of the federal administrative state. In that study, it shows that boards and commissions at the national level are satellites that are unaccountable to the presidency and the Congress. And of course, there's a section in that study that says that that same methodology holds true in the states. 1976, Bruce Arkell, he's the planning coordinator for Governor O'Callaghan. He actually does the first study of boards and commissions in Nevada that was done by, a Nevadan focused on Nevada government as part of a governor's administration. And that was a 5-page study. And in that, he references that there's not much in the historical record about boards and commissions in Nevada, but that we needed reform. And at that time, the recommendation was to reduce 200 appointments and 40 boards. 1977, the governor takes that study, talks about it in the State of the State. And, we don't have much reform. But we fast forward to 2009, we have the SAGE Commission. 2010, they do their study. 2011, they recommend to the legislature that the Sunset Subcommittee be established. 2013, Sunset Subcommittee offers its first report. And from 2013 to 2023, the recommendation is that 38 boards be eliminated. 14 boards were eliminated. But in the last 6 years, the last 3 sessions, Nevada created 47 new boards.
Oh my goodness.
So
Wow.
we have this perpetual board creation machine, and yet every 50 years in our history, we look at boards and we think, boy, we probably need to reform those, but we don't go that far.
All right. So the governor wanted to make this part of his platform and put you in charge of it. Already, of course, there has been quite a bit of pushback.
Yes.
What is the pushback relevant to at this point?
Yeah, so the first thing I need to say is that, we have 1,700 appointments, over 1,700 appointments for our boards and commissions in Nevada.
1,700.
Yes,
Okay.
these are dedicated Nevadans. They have full-time jobs, and they're doing their best to do the best that they can on these boards. And I don't want to diminish the work that they've done because it's important. It's important to all Nevadans and all of our constituents. But we have a system, I think, that's letting Nevadans down. We have a system that was designed a long time ago. As I'd mentioned, we haven't reformed it. In the case of occupational Title 54 boards, it's occupational licensing boards, commonly referred to as Title 54 boards. We have 37 of them. In the 23 session, they were transferred over to my department, Department of Business and Industry. That gives us about 67 boards and commissions at Business and Industry. And there's a few things. So we're trying to solve for mitigating antitrust issues, better accountability, more transparency, reducing redundancy. There's good governance. These are the things that are important to the governor that we're really trying to solve for. And in doing so, we're also seeking to reduce the number of appointees. We've reached a point where it's very hard for any governor to find folks to serve on boards. We're at that point. And even now, in today's legislative sessions, we have a lot of new boards that are proposed. So we have to reconcile this idea with creating boards for specific purposes and the fact that we have boards that are folks that are serving on those boards or have reached and are beyond their statutory time limits, that are serving just because they're good citizens, but we can't replace them. And if they decide to retire and say, I'm not doing this anymore, those boards would cease to function. And so, going back to your original question here about the opposition, I think change is difficult and the unknown is difficult. And the system that we have is a status quo that's developed over many, many decades. There's a fear of folks losing a voice and losing representation, which we've been very careful about in what we're proposing and making sure that we don't diminish anyone's voice in the process. There's also a lot of staff. We're looking in the occupational Title 54 boards, about 318 full-time and part-time staff. And, we don't want to put people out of work. We recognize that, it's not easy to get a job. I mean, I know what that's like in my own personal experience. And so we have to make sure that we solve for those two things, that folks don't lose their voice in the process, that they're able to ensure that from their perspective, their industry is well represented, as well as ensuring that those staff that support those boards have a transition period to maybe a state government job. We still struggle with employment. The Lombardo administration's done a tremendous job. I mean, I think we started at 28% unemployment. We're down to, I think the number's around 17%, and we're continuing to chip away at that. So there's a need in state government. We have to work and have a very formal process for those folks to transition to government positions.
Well, I was going to ask you, am I not correct that this was brought into the legislature rather than the governor's office during Bill Raggio, bringing up his name again, his time at the legislature? Is that correct?
Board reform?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's an issue that keeps on popping up. It's interesting when you go back, and what we try to do, and by the way, we put together a policy paper, my colleague Nikki Haig and I and the business industry, we put together a policy paper, it's on our website, where we unpack this history. And we talk about kind of the evolution in Nevada around how boards developed, and that history I briefly mentioned is in more detail there. But there is I think a sense that comes in during each session that the boards need to be looked at. And we have real accountability issues. I mean, these boards are part of the executive branch, but they function as outliers, as satellites. They really don't adhere to the executive branch budgeting methodology. There's 43 million in reserves out there in all these boards, for instance. We have about, in our research, we have about 42 million in revenue and 47 million in expenditures. What's that $5 million variance? And even with SB 431 passing in 2023, which, as I mentioned, brought those boards into business and industry, we have difficulty getting information from the boards. So there have been outliers, and each administration in its own way has had to reckon with the fact that something happens with a board. and unfortunately, a lot of times that makes the news, in how a board has functioned or not functioned, and so there's a risk to the state, and that's one of the issues that we're trying to solve for, is that we want to make sure that we mitigate that risk.
Okay, so it seems like a huge task, and especially a huge task when we're taping this on April 2nd, and you've only got a couple of months left in the session. There are some, I talked to a lot of people about this. There are some that say that the approach might be better to not try to bite off the whole thing in one shot, but to do it, in various smaller pieces. And I look at that with federal legislation, where you're always trying to get everything done in one shot, and that invariably blows up. So does that have validity, that maybe a lesser approach might be more manageable?
Well, I appreciate
because you're talking about huge numbers here.
Yeah, so I appreciate that question, and we are breaking it up. That's the thing that most folks don't realize. So SB 431 was phase 1. This is phase 2, and we have phase 3 planned for 2027. So we're taking steps, right? So the first thing is that the boards had to be brought into business and industry so that there was more ability to get standards across all the boards. And what we're doing with SB 78 is actually phase 2, which is we're going in and building out the authorities for the division within business and industry. We're building the capacity to reach those objectives that I mentioned. And then in phase 3, we will finish the job. One of the things we're not doing in this session is looking at licensing reciprocity. We're not looking at the individual requirements for licensing. We are the most occupational licensed state in the nation, and we have more requirements for our occupational licensing than any state in the nation.
Okay, so that brings up one of the issues, which is that to get people here to work, which we have a great need for in so many different areas, but the rules and regulations don't allow the transference of licenses, et cetera.
Yes.
So are you going to be able to address that at this point?
We will in 27.
In 27.
So there's a lot of issues here because, again, we're dealing with a system that's evolved over many, many decades without much reform. And for us to go, to your point, if we were to go all in on board reform this session, I don't see that making it through the process. This is a heavy enough lift.
Sure, no kidding.
Right, and so, but what we're focused on is building that solid foundation, getting that oversight in place, mitigating the risk that the boards have. The antitrust issue, for instance, is one where in 2017, there was a antitrust attorney who wrote an article in the California Law Review. And what she had concluded was that Nevada had 80% dominance issues on our boards. And basically what that means is that when you have a quorum, and that quorum is comprised of a majority of individuals on the board, they're licensed by the board on which they sit, there's a potential antitrust issue.
Sure.
And again, she concluded that we had 80% exposure there for our boards. And we needed to solve for that. So 431 was one piece of the pie. In 2014, the Supreme Court in the North Carolina Board of Dental Examiners versus the Federal Trade Commission indicated that that's called dominance, so that's one issue, and the other was supervision. So if a state had adequate supervision, they may be able to counter the dominance issue. But as we dug into the research, we didn't have a lot of clarity and consensus along the legal community. And I'm not an attorney. We consulted many in this process. And with SB 78, we're mitigating that. We have the supervision built in. We've gone through and remade the boards to make sure there is no dominance. So we've laid that issue to rest in this reform. And so, getting back to the original question, there's a lot we have to do with reforming our boards and commissions. We've stayed away from changing the actual policy around the requirements for the boards, the authorities nested in the boards. All of that will carry over to our new merge board proposals. We've purposely tried to walk that fine line of just getting in that accountability, that oversight, shining light on all the fiscal, the money coming in, the money going out. We're requiring the boards now to do P&Ls. They've never had to do that before. Those are going to be posted on the business and industry website. Each dollar should be tracked and known to the public and known to the licensees where it goes and how it's spent.
And at this point, what is the response from the legislature? Let's start with leadership. Are they in support of what you're doing?
I think the legislature's been very fair. And, this is to your point, this is a large undertaking.
It's not large, it's huge.
And it's contentious, it's difficult, it's all those things. And we have endeavored in the very beginning, so we started communicating with as many legislators that would open their door and have a meeting with us months ago. I didn't just show up in the first day of the legislative session and say, "Hey, guess what we're going to do?"
Right.
But we've really tried to be as transparent and open in everything that we're doing. I have a link off the business and industry website where we've put all the information that we have regarding boards and commissions on the site. We met with all the executive directors. We met with the board chairs. And we know this is controversial and folks aren't going to agree. But my point is that we've reached a point where we have to do something. The issues are so great that if our failure to act now with what we know, I think is really would be a failure in some sense of the government process here.
Okay, so is there a force of law behind what you're doing, so that, you know, if you have two separate boards, and I won't even pick any industry, but two separate boards who disagree about being joined, do you have the ability to say, no, this is what we're going to do?
Well, we will with passage of SB 78. I don't currently have that ability. So just from a practical standpoint, I mentioned I have 67 boards and commissions at business and industry. Right now, I have 37 of those boards that have 37 different contracts for IT, 37 different contracts for website, 37 contracts for attorneys, on and on and on and on. That is not efficient. That is not a way to run an organization. And if I was measuring my own P&L, I would do everything I possibly could to mitigate for that duplicity and those resources being wasted when we can get better contracts and do so in a way that makes more sense. And so, you know, that SB 78 will help us be able to do that, to align all of these boards, to mitigate what ultimately will be over time waste. Why have that waste in the system when we can do a better job and modernize that system?
All right, let's take a break. We'll come back more with Chris Sanchez after this timeout.
Meet Nevada Health Link, Nevada's official health insurance marketplace. Your link to savings, selection, free assistance, and name brand health insurance, where 90% of enrollees lower the cost of their monthly premium. Everyone deserves access to quality health coverage, no matter your income or family size. Visit NevadaHealthLink.com. A few minutes could save you hundreds of dollars per month.
Nevada Health Link. Our plans are made for your plans.
A power line is more than a power line. It's maintaining the bottom line for small businesses. It's keeping the assembly line moving for our workforce. For our brightest minds, it's meeting a deadline. It's on the front line with our heroes. And on the sidelines of the biggest games. It's a direct line to our loved ones. And it's a lifeline for the most vulnerable. There's a lot on the line.
The trucking industry is the most resilient link in the supply chain. And for over 90 years, the Nevada Trucking Association has been the voice for the men and women in the trucking industry. From Carson City to Washington, D.C., we advocate for policies to protect our trucking companies and keep commerce flowing. Because Nevada's and America's prosperity is tied to trucks. There's nothing without trucking.
Take a look at Pro Group Management and see how your workers' comp requirements can be met head-on. By taking a proactive approach, Pro Group can assure that your company is meeting or exceeding state and federal standards. As you move forward in your industry, Pro Group moves with you, simplifying regulatory tasks, clearing the way so you can get the job done and look to your future success. Pro Group Management, workers' comp that works for you.
This is Nevada Newsmakers.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, we continue our conversation with Dr. Chris Sanchez. He's the director of the Nevada Department of Business and Industry, which is a huge department and oversees so many different divisions that we don't have time to get to today. And hopefully you will come back soon and we can talk more about some of the other areas. One of the things that you raised there near the end was technology. And it seems, as we saw with just the unemployment payments in the COVID situation, that we are way behind in technology in this state, perhaps in many states, but in particular in Nevada.
So that's right. And the example that you raised is a good one with respect to the unemployment payments. And that was an issue that that was rooted in a legacy system that was developed, you know, eons ago, and only so many people in the state, I think a handful, I don't remember the exact number, but it was less than 5, that understood how that system worked.
Which is frightening.
It is, but you know, unfortunately, that's not, you know, an outlier. And in my own agency, you know, we have technology and systems that were designed in the early 2000s, late 1990s. And so
which is back in ancient times.
Well, and we have some divisions that are still literally receiving papers and taking the information on that paper and keying it in. We're not that far removed from typewriters in some instances. And so when we talk about new technology and we talk about like artificial intelligence, for instance, right? You know, there's all this excitement about what these new technologies will do, but we have to reconcile with where we actually are in our agencies across state government. And, we are modernizing. That's the good news. We are modernizing. It's a priority of the governor and the administration, part of the good governance that the governor's been talking about and proposing. But my gosh, we have systems that have been just languishing for so long. Talk about a big endeavor. This is another big endeavor for reform in state government. Just for instance, in the agencies where I have those legacy systems, it's one thing to identify a new software, a new technology that you would like to acquire and bring into the agency, but then you have to figure out, how am I going to get all the information in this system that doesn't talk to anything into this new system that can have interoperability and talk? But you're dealing with an antiquated system. I mean, Clinton was president when some of these things were developed. And you think about, Al Gore inventing the internet. I mean, this is the time we're back to with when these things were created, right? And yet we still live with them every day in our government and how it functions, and frankly doesn't function sometimes in Nevada.
To say the least. And then that also opens up the question about hacking. Because if your systems are so, well, maybe the systems are so old, the hackers don't even know how to deal with these. Yeah, it's like, what is it? It's Pong. What is it?
Right, exactly. When you're one step removed from like keying actual physical papers in, maybe hacking, unless somebody takes a paper home, I don't know that it's a threat. But, look, I mean, obviously.
Okay, so, I mean, ballpark, if you needed to fix all of these systems to bring them up to a modern standard, you're talking, what, billions of dollars?
It's hard to put a number on it, and I'll tell you from my experience at BNI why. Interestingly, we have all these solutions out in this space that we can bring to bear in any application into our agency. What we're finding is that it's often very difficult. We have to work very closely with the software companies. So off-the-shelf software is not, the solution one might think it is, which means you then have to go back 2 or 3 steps and start to be in the development phase. That takes time. You have to figure out what the bugs are in that new software that you're developing. That requires expertise. It requires another set of eyes and skill sets to come into that process. So to your point, it gets very expensive. Where there is off-the-shelf technology and you can have staff adapt to the technology instead of the technology adapt to the agency, that saves a little bit of expense, but then you're looking at a time to implementation and delivery. And so all those things have to be weighed.
Quick question, because we got to take a break here. But are there other states that have these systems that we could utilize?
Well, boards and commissions is a good example. So we've identified 2 states, Iowa and Arkansas, that have systems that we think, when we aggregate all of our boards, are already light years ahead of where we are today. That ideally we'd just like to steal. I mean, we're already trying to figure out who developed those systems and the companies that created those systems and how we can bring them to Nevada.
All right, let's take another quick break and we'll be right back.
The Nevada Builders Alliance has been protecting the interests of the construction industry for over 50 years. Our programs save members thousands of dollars every year and allow them to provide much-needed benefits to their employees. Our industry also allows Nevada to grow. If you're thinking about a career in the construction industry, reach out. And if you haven't thought of a career in construction, what are you waiting for? We are the Nevada Builders Alliance.
Welcome to Story County, where history meets innovation, and a pioneering spirit continues to shape our future. At the heart of the Tahoe Reno Industrial Center, we power the future with global leaders in technology and manufacturing, driving progress that reaches far beyond our county lines. From advanced manufacturing to tech innovation, our industries are creating thousands of quality careers, fueling a vibrant economy that benefits every Nevadan. But it's more than just growth. Our community is our foundation, supporting families, empowering local initiatives, and creating a place where everyone belongs. Be part of a legacy built on bold ideas and boundless possibilities. Join us in building a brighter future right here in Story County. Story County, helping build Nevada's future.
Save money and take transit. Did you know you can ride the bus all day for less than what it would cost you for a gallon of gas? Plan your trip now by going to rtcwashoe.com.
This is Nevada Newsmakers.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, we continue our conversation with Dr. Kristopher Sanchez. He is the director of the Nevada Department of Business and Industry. Cryptocurrency, huge issue, huge concerns?
Yeah, so from a regulatory standpoint, we have to make sure that we have the expertise within the agency to regulate these new technologies. And we talked about technology from how it can help the agency, but from a regulatory standpoint, when we look at blockchain, we looked at crypto, these folks are highly sought after in private industry. They command a high salary. Our job descriptions, our salary, how we think about bringing those experts into state government, especially on the regulatory side, we have to rethink that and how competitive we are in the private space.
But it sounds like something that is urgently needed as more and more people are investing in cryptocurrency. I mean, just from the not getting scammed portion.
Right. Oh, it's so true. I mean, crypto, blockchain, AI, I mean, all these things are evolving rapidly. Their utilization is evolving. There are some models in other states that we can look at, like Wyoming, for instance, with respect to blockchain, that are kind of a model for what we can do. But we're going to have to, and it's one of the things we are working with through our financial institutions division. We're looking at this very closely and how we can bring on that expertise to get smarter as quickly as we can in that space.
And I have one warning about AI, which is don't believe everything that AI tells you because it ain't that perfect yet.
Well, they tell me that the worst AI we'll have is the AI you have today. Tomorrow's will be better.
Yeah, well,
because it's learning so fast.
Ain't that the truth?
Right.
Thank you so much for doing this. Good luck with your mission. It's a big mission, and we'll be following it for the next several years, obviously.
Thank you.
Come back soon, please, and we'll be right back.
Your good times are at Tamarack Casino during the $150,000 Denim and Diamonds giveaways with cash and free play drawings every Thursday and Saturday, and $30,000 in grand finale giveaways Saturday, May 31st, including a top prize of $20,000 guaranteed. Your good times are at Tamarack Casino.
Imagine a magical garden that feeds Carson City's hungry and homeless, teaches our high school students agriculture, creates hanging floral displays to beautify downtown, and yet charges nothing. It's not magic. It's the Greenhouse Project. It's real, it's growing, and it needs your help. Go online to carsоncitygreenhouse.org so together we can grow it forward.
Each day, the Children's Advocacy Alliance partners with leaders, legislators, and families across Nevada to improve children's health, education, economic well-being, and safety. We recognize Nevada will be no better than the state of its children. Be a part of this change. Be a supporter of the Children's Advocacy Alliance. For more information, go to caanv.org.
When in Carson City, Nevada Newsmakers records in the conference room of the Nevada Builders Alliance. Coverage of the 2025 legislative session is brought to you by Pro Group Management, workers' comp that works for you. NV Energy, proudly serving Nevada, providing electricity to 2.4 million electric customers. The Retail Association of Nevada, looking out for business. And by Story County, helping build Nevada's future.
Thanks for watching Nevada Newsmakers, come to you from Carson City, from the headquarters of the Nevada Builders Alliance. We'll see you on the next broadcast. Thanks for watching.